We want to welcome to the program Dr. Tremitiere. Hello, Dr. Tremitiere. How's everything?
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. How's everything on your end?
It's good. It's good. Good. All good here.
All right, solid. So let's jump right to it. Let's start off with your upbringing. Your upbringing was very unique in a lot of ways. You grew up in York, Pennsylvania, and you had an interesting upbringing. You were adopted, and you were among children from different ethnic backgrounds. How was that upbringing like growing up in York in that particular unique family setting?
Sure. It was, it was, educational. We learned a lot of things growing up. We learned to disregard color and backgrounds, and my parents did an amazing job with all of us. It's tough nowadays. I see parents struggling with 2 and 3 kids, and so for them to have done what they did with all 15 of us, and all of us getting our degrees, and no one was in jail or anything like that. I just give credit to them. Lost my mom in 2017, so the family dynamic has shifted a little bit, but it's been an amazing experience, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Wow, that's awesome to hear. Interesting, right there. Give my condolences to you with the loss of your mother, and I lost my father. No, it's been tough. It's a process, and just when I think about life, it goes on, and you just have to keep on pushing. And
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right about that. And again, just looking at your background right here, so you grew up in a big family with different ethnicities. Before we get into the athletic side of things, do you think with that upbringing that you had, do you think it was a motivating force in not just dealing with people on a basketball standpoint, but just from a societal standpoint and later on furthering your education?
Absolutely. That's a good question. I think that growing up in my family helped me on the basketball court, and I always felt as though life imitated sport. And, as a point guard, and whether it's in high school or not so much high school, but college in the WNBA, you're always getting new teammates, and you don't control where they come from and their background or their races. And so I try to be the kind of player, and I try to be the kind of person that can get along with anybody and can kind of adapt to my situation. It was still tough every now and then, especially in Alabama, to hear the N-word, and that doesn't make it any easier. Growing up in the family that I did, but I do think it helped me to adapt and to overcome and to better handle those kind of situations.
All right, we're going to get to your time at Auburn in just a minute, but I want to get back to your upbringing in York, Pennsylvania. So you grew up playing basketball with your siblings. Did you have did any of your siblings have an athletic background to prepare you for this, or was just simple, get in the backyard and we just learn how to play, or they'll take you to the park and we'll show you a few things?
Right. You know what? It was actually my mom. Some of my brothers played basketball or tried to play a little bit. They were athletic, played football and soccer, not really basketball. And my mom, when I was 13 years old, they brought the family together and said, look, we'll either build a pool or a sport court in the backyard. And so I wasn't in the room when that happened, and they voted, and it was 7-7. And so I came back into the room, and my mom told me that it was up to me, and obviously with 14 brothers and sisters looking at me like, you better vote our way. And so I just looked at my mom, and I said, Mom, you know what, if you put a sport court back there, I promise you that you won't have to pay for me to go to college, that I'll get a scholarship. And so I voted for the sport court, and we got the sport court. And so it was just me going outside and playing outside in the backyard, and to the wee hours in the morning until she turned off the lights, and that's kind of how it happened. And invited friends over and played with them, and then it was going to the park and playing with the guys, and I just kind of fell in love with it.
Oh wow, that's a unique introduction, I guess, into the world of playing basketball, right there. Having your siblings involved, and of course, a family vote was involved in that. So
Right.
after your high school career, you attended.
Sure.
You chose to attend Auburn University, where you received a full basketball scholarship. Did you receive any other scholarship offers besides Auburn?
I did. I had about 22 offers, but I only wanted to go to Temple. Long story short, the game that I thought I was gonna, the next weekend I thought I was gonna go, and on my recruiting visit they had it set up, and the weekend before that was the district semifinals, and that morning my birth mother showed up out of nowhere, so it kind of shook me, and I didn't have a very good game, and Temple called me after that game and told me that they moved on from me and wanted somebody else. And my mom had sent a tape to Auburn, because at that point, kind of everybody else had signed everywhere and so on and so forth. And she sent a tape to Auburn, and he liked it. He came up and saw me playing a couple All-Star games. And once I got on campus at Auburn, it was over. I fell in love with it as soon as I got on campus.
Okay, well, good enough right there. So you attend Auburn University on a basketball scholarship, and really your last 2 years, actually, I'm looking at it right here, it said that you played every game. You started every game for the Lady Tigers basketball team in 1990-91 season. And in 1990, you were selected to the NCAA All-Tournament team. So just talk about that year specifically. What made the 90-91 season so special?
Actually, I think it was the culture that was built my freshman year. We had two really good teams that played in the national championship my freshman and sophomore year. So I think a standard was built. The foundation was set already, and so going into our junior year, we knew we had a pretty good team. And we wanted to win the national championship, and so we had a crazy Louisiana Tech team that was undefeated in the semifinals, and we were able to hand them a pretty good loss, and we thought we were going to win the national championship, but Stanford was they shot the lights out, and I still remember it very well. When you shoot 65% from the 3-point line for a game, you're not really going to lose. So we lost that one, but it was more than basketball. It was the opportunity to play on the big stage, and I'm sure my family was proud.
Yeah, I'm sure they were proud. And speaking of being proud, you played in a proud conference such as the Southeastern Conference, the SEC, and we know that the SEC is very competitive in all sports: football,
right,
basketball, baseball, track and field, gymnastics, and so on and so forth. During your time at Auburn, who would you consider to have been your biggest rivals?
Well, when I was playing, Tennessee was our biggest rival. It was either us or them winning the SEC championship, and it was weird because the 4 years that I was there, whoever went further in the SEC championship, the other team went further in the NCAA tournament, and so we had some pretty good battles with Tennessee, and we weren't really worried about any other team in the SEC. Not really worried about Bama or Georgia or anything like that. It was Tennessee. It was those battles at Tennessee.
All right, let's stay with those teams that you were on during your time at Auburn. Ruthie Bolden, one of the great women players of all time, and also made her mark during her time in the WNBA. What was it like having her as a teammate at Auburn?
I mean, it was good. She was an All-American, and that's what I learned behind. Her work ethic and just how much she loved the game and how much she loved her teammates kind of rubbed out on me, and then so we became really, really good friends, and it luckily we got the chance to play in the WNBA together, and she's just great people. We still stay in touch often. She's good people, and that's just the kind of people that we were around.
All right, awesome to hear. And then I want to stay with Auburn for a moment. I know you mentioned about the use of the N word and being in that environment and in the, as they say, in the plains of Alabama. But I want to know, what was the transition like? I'm not talking about from a basketball standpoint, but what was the transition like from a social standpoint, coming from the East Coast in York, Pennsylvania, to having to travel to Auburn, Alabama? What were some of the challenges that you had to face to adjust to not just the college environment, but just to being in Auburn in general?
Right. Well, the biggest challenge was it was hot. I wasn't used to it being, 100 degrees at 9 o'clock in the morning, and so that was a tough transition. But as far as socially, like I mentioned earlier, I think my upbringing and I think my parents prepared me and my siblings very well to handle those type of situations. And obviously, the South is a lot more conservative than the East Coast, and people are a little more apt to give you their opinion based on your race. But it only happened twice, and I smiled and walked away. And I think sometimes when that happens, if somebody comes at you with hate and you return a smile to them, I think that hurts them more than if you react. I think they want you to react. And when you react to somebody's hate with hate, then you justify, their action, their intentions anyways.
As the old saying goes, kill them with kindness, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good response to that one right there. So you made the most out of your time at Auburn University. So you earned your bachelor's degree in public relations from the university. What was it about public relations that made you want to study in depth in this field?
Well, you know what? To be honest, the reason I wanted to go to Temple is because I wanted to act, and then I thought I could major in theater at Auburn. That's what I thought when I went on my recruiting visit. But then when I got down there, we found out that all the theater classes and all the acting classes were in the afternoon, and that's when practice was. So I had to change my major, and so I knew I had the kind of personality that could talk to anybody, and I'd like to fix problems, and so I actually decided to get a double major in marketing and public relations. So it was fun. Not really the path I wanted at first, but it turned out pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. So you earned your bachelor's degree to do a double major, and you were a double major. Earning your double majoring in marketing and public relations, and after you became an assistant coach at Auburn, and then later at the University of Texas, and then the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. So after your time coaching, doing the assistant coaching at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, you played overseas in Poland, and then there was a league by the name of the WNBA that you had a chance to play in. Just tell the audience a little bit about how did that come about with the WNBA.
Right. Well, and actually, I didn't. My first year in Poland was actually after my first year in the WNBA. So up to that point, I hadn't played. I thought at that point, it's an easy transition for a point guard to go into coaching, and so that's what I did. And then when I heard about the WNBA, it's a funny story that I called the director of player personnel, Renee Brown, and I introduced myself and I said, how do I get involved? How do I get invited to the pre-draft camp? And she said, I'm sorry, we already invited all of our 60 players that we're inviting. And I said, well, I want to be number 61. And she was like, we can't do that. I followed your career at Auburn. You had a great career, whatever, but, maybe next year, whatever. And I said, well, are there anyone that you've already invited to this pre-draft camp? Are you going to see them anytime soon? This is on a Tuesday, and she said, well, yeah, I'm actually going to be in Washington, D.C. this weekend at a tournament or whatever. And I said, okay. I said, you know what? I'm going to find a team to play in that tournament. I'm going to play in that tournament. Our team's going to win it. I'm going to get MVP, and then you're going to invite me to the draft. And, obviously she took that with a grain of salt or whatever. So I was on the phone all week, and then Friday evening I found a team, went down to D.C., played Saturday and Sunday. Our team won the championship. I got MVP, and she came up after the game and said, "You were right," and handed me her business card, and that's how I got invited to the pre-draft camp.
Oh wow, that's certainly interesting, right there. I mean, I've heard stories about that in different leagues, but nothing like that. And considering the WNBA, because when you joined the league, it was new, and the hype was so real behind that. Because I want to transition now to just the hype and the everything that happened during the time of the WNBA with commercials galore with Lisa Leslie and Rebecca Lobo and Cheryl Swoops, and I mean there was a big marketing campaign for the WNBA. Were you a part of any of those big public relations campaigns? Well, not just for the WNBA, but the team that you were drafted by with the Sacramento Monarchs?
Yeah, definitely. They did the campaign called Sisterhood, and they had put Ruthie and I together in a commercial to start the league, to start that season. But obviously, I was new in the town of Sacramento. I was new in the league, and they liked my story of my family and things like that. And so I was, featured on Inside Stuff and shows like that. And although it was fun to get my story out, it was about playing basketball and playing the game I loved and falling in love with the city of Sacramento.
Okay, so you did your thing, and that's what we're going to transition to next. So that you were drafted in the 1997 WNBA draft in the third round. You were the 18th pick in the third round, selected by the Sacramento Monarchs. Now, when you were drafted by the Monarchs, that was a unique time because the WNBA, as I said before earlier, was just starting out, and there was a big promotional campaign for the WNBA, and then also too you being in Sacramento, which is an NBA town, the Sacramento Kings, and the Kings were winning at the time. Chris Webber had just gotten there, and then Vlade Divac had just gotten there, so the Sacramento Kings were riding a high at that particular time. Jason Williams was also arriving there. So tell me, what was it like being a part of the Monarchs during that time and coinciding with the success of the Sacramento Kings?
Well, I mean, it was great. I mean, the day after I got there, Odin Polynice, who was the center before Vlade, he was my frat brother. I'm a Zeta, he's a Sigma. And the day after I got there, and I went to my apartments where they were housing us, and he introduced himself, and he said, "Hey, Sarah, I got a present for you," and he got me a truck. They didn't give us transportation out there, and he was like, I know you're from Pennsylvania. I didn't want you to have to bring your car all the way out here, and so he bought me a truck. And Mitch Richmond was really, really good to us, and the guys. I mean, we were really close to the Kings team. They were intrigued about the league being its first year and things like that.
All right, so let's take a look briefly at the 97 Monarch season. So you guys finished 10-18, finished in third place in the Western Conference. Right in front of you was Phoenix. The Phoenix Mercury was 16-12, and then the Los Angeles Sparks, of course, finished with a record of 14-14. So I'm looking at the schedule right here. You guys had some pretty competitive games. They were tough at times. During your time with the Monarchs, who would you have considered to been your toughest opponent?
Well, I mean, the person I guarded the toughest was Cheryl Swoops and Cynthia Cooper, obviously. But at that time, there were only 80 women in the world that were in the league, and so we knew that all the games were going to be competitive. So you had to come bring it every day. We knew that nobody in that league was going to go undefeated. And so, we had some injuries along the way and things like that. But, at the end of the day, we got to play basketball. We got to get paid for it in America and be professional athletes.
All right, so also in that 97 season, you reunited with your college teammate, Ruthie Bolton. you had the experience with her being a teammate in college at Auburn, but now this was a whole another world. This is the WNBA. This is, as you said, you guys were getting the ladies out there were getting paid to be professionals. So what was it like having her as a teammate this time on a professional level?
You know, I always getting to know Ruthie in college. You know, I always knew she was a good person, and so, you know, when you have to deal with the rigors of professional sports and the fans, and sometimes unruly fans or pushy fans, you know, it's good to have teammates around that you can trust and that you can just go hang out with and share your values, and that's what Ruthie and I did. You know, we spent a lot of time together and you know, just try to navigate the world of professional sports together, which I think made it easier for both of us.
All right, so let's move along now so you played one season in Sacramento, then in 1998 and 1999, the Salt Lake City, Utah, they got a WNBA team, the Utah Stars, and you played on that team along with another guard, Tammy Reese. So tell me, what was the transition like going from Sacramento to Utah?
Honestly, I hated it. I fired my agent over it. I didn't want to play in Utah. At least that's what I thought when I first got there. I didn't, you know, playing there when I was in Sacramento, you know, it was hard to breathe, and there weren't a lot of African Americans in Salt Lake City. And so, you know, once I got there and settled in a little bit, and Karl Malone and I became really, really good friends, and I mean, it was okay. I would have preferred to play in LA or New York, and I think everyone knew that. But, you know, it was a good experience.
Let's stay with Utah for a moment. You know, it's something that you had brought up again. You mentioned about your upbringing in Pennsylvania and then having to transition to get adjusted to playing in Auburn and Alabama. But what were some of the social the challenges you mentioned? Of course, there weren't enough African Americans in Utah. But what were some of the other things that you had to fight through just during your time in Salt Lake City?
You know, I mean, it was a huge Mormon population, which was, you know, a religion I wasn't familiar with up to that point. And so, you know, it was different, you know, and there's a difference. You know, people always, you know, when you're in the spotlight or you know, that's one thing that Utah taught me, I think, is, you know, when you're the starting point guard for the team and you know, you're doing well regardless, or you're on TV, you know, people gravitate to you for those reasons. And you kind of learn how to weed out who's there because of what you do or who's there because of who you are. And so I think that helped me in that respect. And you learn a lot about yourself when you're in situations that you're uncomfortable in. And I wasn't really that comfortable in Utah. You know, I'd love being able to get out and talk to people and things like that. And, you know, there's some people that, because you're African American, or because, you know, whatever it is about you, it could be your race, it could be where you grew up, it could be your lifestyle choices, whatever, you know, they're not going to want to hang around with you. And so that taught me that lesson in Utah.
All right, so during the 98 season with the Utah Stars, your team finished 8-22 below 500, and then your last year in Utah, your team finished below 500 with a record of 15-17. So your last year in the WNBA, you played in the year of 2000 with the Indiana Fever. Now, before the Indiana Fever became one of the top dogs in the WNBA, it was still a brand new franchise. Any memories that you have of during your time in Indiana during its the inaugural season?
Well, I'll tell you this, Indiana was probably my favorite place and still remains one of the most classiest organizations in the WNBA. You know, Donnie Walsh, you know, at that time, and Kelly Crosskoff, and you know, Ann Donovan was the coach, and Nell Fortner. You know, it was just a class organization. And so that was good memories. I just knew at that time it was time for me to retire. I knew I wanted to do different things with my life, and I wasn't passionate about playing basketball anymore. And I knew when that happened, I knew it would be time to step away.
The Indiana Fever in the inaugural season, it finished with a record of 9-23 below 500 in its opening season. So let's stay with basketball for a moment. You made a mentioning about not enjoying your time in Utah. You said that you fired your agent as a result of it. Who was your agent that was representing you?
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Okay. I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that.
Okay, fair enough. Look, we'll move right along to that. So
right.
After your time playing in the WNBA, you retired from basketball. You mentioned earlier that you wanted to major in theater. Well, you had an opportunity to act in a movie in the 2002 Walt Disney movie titled Double Teamed, which was based on the true life story of professional basketball players Heather and Heidi Burge. What was that experience like?
One of the best in the world. That was the most calming I've ever felt in my life, being on set, and that was a once in a lifetime experience. Not many people get to act in Disney movies.
Do you still earn residual checks from that? Do you still earn residual checks from the movie?
I can't talk about that. Come on,
I got you. Okay. Well, fair enough. All right, so let's. So again, you've acted in a movie. You did that. So now let's move along now to a gentleman by the name of Master P, and something you did with No Limit Records. How did the Master P thing come about, and how did you hook up with producing Hootie Hoo?
In my first year in the league, P had reached out to me and expressed interest in signing me to No Limit Sports. And so I signed with No Limit Sports, and I went down there and asked him, when we were negotiating that contract, I asked him to listen to a song I had produced. And the next day, he called me up, told me to bring my beat machine, and we went to go play basketball, and then he was going into the studio, and that's how it happened. Next thing you know, it's on the radio.
That's interesting. Oh, wow. That's awesome right there. I want to ask you about a production team, Beats by the Pound. We know Beats by the Pound, in my opinion, is so underrated. We're the likes of KLC and Odell and Craig B and Carlos Stevens and Moby Dick. I want to know, what was that experience like working with Beats by the Pound?
It was good. They really knew their thing, and they, took me in under their wing, and the first time producer as I was, they were really, really professional, and it was a great experience with them.
Man, that song played on a lot of stations across the country, and it was played on BET and MTV and any video outlet that was out there at that time. I mean, had that song come out on the internet or YouTube, I mean, man, it would have been mega. I mean, the song was already a mega success, but it would have really blown up if the end of it. I mean, the internet was just starting at the time, but there was no social media. It hadn't advanced. But you did your thing with No Limit Records and TRU. Have you done any production work with P or anything in the music world since that song? No,
not really. I produced a couple. Like the opening for the Utah Jazz and the Stars, and that played with their intro videos and stuff like that. But it became more of a hobby for me, and I don't know. I just became more of a hobby for me.
You returned to your alma mater to earn your MBA and the doctorate from Auburn University. What did you earn your doctorate in?
I got my doctorate in educational leadership.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So tell me, what was the reason for you wanting to return to your alma mater to advance your education?
I don't think My mom was an educated woman. She had her doctorate, and I just think owning a business, I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to be a better businesswoman, and so that was my initial thought, going back to school. And then I was given the opportunity to to get my PhD, and so I took it, and I'm glad I did.
Awesome. I'm glad you did. So, man, that's an important tip to a lot of former athletes or just anybody in general. You have it on your mind, and you want to continue to further your education. Go back and do it. So, congratulations again on that. So, you've also served as a motivational speaker. You've reached out to at-risk youth, and you've always made your mark at just going to different schools and different community centers in terms of just reaching out to the youth. Did that come from your time growing up, or was it something that happened at Auburn, or was it just something that you wanted to do just to make a difference?
I've always wanted to give back to the kids. I love the youth, and I just felt like if I always knew that if I was ever given a platform where I could make a difference in kids' lives, that I would take advantage of that, and so that's what I did.
With the auntie skits that you've been doing, how did that come about?
I just when I train kids in Auburn, after our sessions, I would always challenge them to see who can make a half-court shot first. And then TikTok came about, and I said, let me throw one up here on TikTok and see. And then at first, it did okay, but I had young men coming on and saying, "Oh, you can't do that with a women's ball. I mean, you can't do that with a men's ball, or those shots are trick shots. I mean, they're camera angles or whatever." And so, I took on the mantra, the auntie thing, where, I came at them, and other commenters were like, "Don't come after auntie like that." So I decided to change my name and just do other videos and have fun with it, and it seemed to have taken off.
Did you? Well, I mean, I was going to ask this question. We know it's social media. I mean, all it takes is one video and something catchy for something to take off like that. But did you expect it to take off?
No, absolutely not. I didn't. I never imagined that NBC News and Inside Edition would be calling me, asking me to play the video. But like I've said before, I've always felt like I'm humbled, and it's exciting. But I've always known that this whole thing is bigger than me, and so if for 60-second video people can forget about injustices that are happening in our country, if for 60 seconds I can take that away from them and make them smile, then I feel like I'm doing okay.
Absolutely, you're right about that, and it's taken a lot of us away from what's currently going on in our world right now. Let the audience know where they can find you on social media, and if you have a website, let them know that as well.
Sure. My website, ChantelTremitiere.com. My TikTok is Auntie Chantel. My Instagram is Chantel Trem. And my Twitter is CR Tremitiere. So I like to engage with people on social media. Obviously, I can't comment back to everyone. But I try to do my best to interact with people, and like I said, I'm doing these videos to have fun, and I'd love for people to have fun with them. And so, if we can all smile together and make a little dent in the world, then let's do that.
Well, you heard it from her. She's Dr. Chantel Tremitiere. Dr. Tremitiere, Thank you so much for being on the program.
No problem. I appreciate you taking the time.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning into the channel. Remember to click like, share, and subscribe, and thank you for watching.